Both the Bitcoin and Ethereum chart are looking extremely bearish, but I'm looking for longs right now. Am I crazy? We can see that Bitcoin took a major dump yesterday and many people are now calling for the top. But in my opinion, it's not the case at all. Because what we can see on the Bitcoin chart is that Bitcoin for now is still simply range bound with the range high right over here. And we have our range low right over here. Where is Bitcoin currently at? It's currently at the range low area, which means that the last thing that you want to do is to start looking for shorts over here only if you get very strong confirmations. But we know that as long as Bitcoin is range bound near the range lows, we always want to look for longs because we want to trade this range until it breaks. Now currently there's two ways that you can play this range. The first way that we can start looking for longs on Bitcoin is if Bitcoin decides to take a push outside of the range, which will make even more people bearish. Now why is that the case? Because in that case Bitcoin will also break through this low over here and many people will be calling for a top, will be calling for a break of structure and will be expecting more downside. But if this happens, I will actually be looking for a potential range low deviation play over here. Am I simply blindly going to long the price of Bitcoin, set limit orders over here and then target new all-time highs? Surely not. That's definitely not something I would like to do because the local trend over here for Bitcoin is to the downside, and if we want to look for longs on Bitcoin, we always want to shift this local trend to the downside first and only then we start looking for longs. Now when we analyze that structure more in depth, we can see that we put in a very significant low right over here. After we put in that significant low, that low brought us to this high over here. Now this high over here just a few hours ago brought us to this lower low over here, which means that this lower low over here that we formed a few hours ago becomes a very significant low. How so? Because it took out the low right over here and it swept major liquidity beneath that low, which means that every single high that we form after this low over here, as long as that high, in this case it is this high over here, brings us to a lower low, that high becomes a very significant high to break. Now in this case that also aligns with the idea of a potential deviation beneath the range low. If we get another push outside of this range, we are going to form a lower low. We are going to mitigate the liquidity pool and this high becomes a significant high to break. Now in that case, in order to then confirm the deviation, I would like Bitcoin to push back inside of the range to then confirm the break of structure over here of this very significant high, and only then I'm willing to play the higher low over here with my invalidation beneath the deviation low, and as a target then we are obviously targeting that range high for a beautiful RR of 3.35. Now something to also take into account when you're calling for a Bitcoin top is the fact that whoops, you don't want your portfolio to drop like that, so make sure to like and subscribe and let's keep things steady. When we look at the weekly time frame over here, we can see that the current weekly candle has no wick to the upside created over here, which means that when we look at the previous red candlesticks, this one over here, what we notice is that every single red candlestick first puts in a wick to the upside and then expands to the downside. Also over here, first we put in a wick to the upside and then we expand to the downside. What we can also see is that all of the green candles first put in a wick to the downside and then expand towards the upside. Now right now we are potentially looking at a wick to the downside before expansion towards the upside. Now the second way that I'm looking for a potential long on Bitcoin, and this is the more risky approach, is when we look at this last move to the downside, we can see that we created this bearish R1 fair value gap. Now this in my opinion could be a potential change in state of delivery. If Bitcoin decides to get a push towards the upside and flip this R1 bearish fair value gap and at the same time also break structure over here on the 15-minute time frame, in that case I'm looking for a potential risky long position upon the retest of that R1 previous bearish fair value gap that should then turn into an inversion, and then I'm also targeting new weekly highs and eventually even higher levels. You're looking for a long position like this with your invalidation beneath the low over here, and as a target we are once again going to target that range high, in this case for an RR 5.31. Do know that this is more of a risky approach rather than the deviation play. Now when we look at the Ethereum chart, we can also see that Ethereum has been taking out major sell side liquidity beneath the low over here, and not only has it been taking out major sell side liquidity, Ethereum on some exchanges didn't fill that 50% wick fill level yet, and right now on all exchanges that 50% wick fill level, as we can see over here, has now been tapped, and this might be a potential area for a potential bounce. The second reason, before I move to the third reason why Ethereum might see a potential bounce and why I'm looking for longs, is the fact that Ethereum is creating a potential PO3 in which we have accumulation over here. We are currently looking at potential manipulation before potential expansion towards the upside, which could trigger a major rally towards new all-time highs. And now the third reason why I'm looking for longs on Ethereum is the fact that we are forming this major SMT between Bitcoin and between Ethereum, in which Ethereum is forming a higher low right over here, as we can see on the daily time frame, and at the same time Bitcoin is forming a lower low. Now this is a very strong sign for a potential bottom and for a potential reversal. Now the way that I'm looking to execute this on Ethereum is rather simple. I'm looking for a potential deviation beneath this range low to be confirmed, and as soon as we confirm this deviation, the PO3 is coming into play and Ethereum should be pumping much higher. Now how are we looking to execute this? We can see that also Ethereum, just like Bitcoin on that last move to the downside, has been putting in this bearish fair value gap, in this case even on the 4-hourly time frame. Now I'm looking for Ethereum to get a push above the bearish fair value gap and to close an hour 4 candle above it in order to not only reclaim the range low, but also to get a change in state of delivery. In that case, I'm looking for a retest of the previous bearish fair value gap that should then act as an inversion with our invalidation beneath the low over here, and then I'm targeting the buy side liquidity over here as our very first target for Ethereum for a major RR of approximately 5.